Alexa, which is the oldest motorcycle company in the world?
Here's something I found on the web. According to rideability.com, for 118 years now and counting, Royal Enfield is the world's oldest motorcycling company in continuous production.
Alexa, which is the longest running motorcycle in the world?
Here's something I found on the web. According to totalmotorcycle.com, Bullet, the quintessential Royal Enfield, is today the longest running motorcycle in history to be in continuous production.
Alexa, open the pod bay doors.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. I'm not Hal and we're not in space.
Before we get started, don't forget to leave a like on this video and don't forget to subscribe. I've had 1,000 new subscribers in the last week, which is actually quite fantastic, but it could be better. My analytics are still telling me that something like 60% of all views on my videos are from non-subscribers. It's totally free. Hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell button, and then ensure that your notifications are enabled in your setting. About this time last year, well, maybe a little bit later, I announced my intentions of buying a Royal Enfield Bullet, and I warned that production had actually stopped apart from the last tribute models, which were actually held up slightly by the pandemic and the lockdowns in India. Now, a lot of people instantly jumped down my throat. I think it's because they'd misinterpreted the press releases on what was actually happening, telling me that sales of the Bullet had only stopped in India and they were going to continue in the rest of the world, but that's not the case. What the press release meant was that they would continue to sell the residual stocks throughout the rest of the world until they'd gone. And guess what? They've now almost gone. And so, in true internet fashion, I'm now getting comments and emails complaining, why am I promoting a motorcycle that is now getting particularly difficult to get hold of? The answer to that question is, I'm not promoting this motorcycle. I don't work for Royal Enfield. My Classic 500 is my Classic 500. I paid for it. And all I'm actually doing is just sharing the experience with you. And of course with people who had the foresight to get one before they became scarce. But since people have been asking, here's my 5 top reasons why you should buy a Royal Enfield Classic 500 before they've all gone. In no particular order, starting with reason number 5. I think it was Twiggy that once said you meet the nicest people on a Honda. Now, that may well have been the case back in the 1970s, but this is the 21st century. To my eye, over the years, motorcycle design has become more and more mundane. There was a time when motorcycle brands had distinct looks about them, but these days they all look pretty much the same. Tupperware-clad cliches that have just become invisible to the casual passerby. Now, I think it's fair to say that most modern classic bikes do provoke attention from other people, but I've never come across anything quite like the Bullet's ability to just drag people from afar and force them to talk to you, even when you don't really want to talk to them. The Classic 500 is the king of casual conversation. Ladies and gentlemen of all ages will stop in the tracks, come over and start to admire your bike and comment on how beautiful she looks. The Bullet even stops traffic. Now, admittedly, some of them stop because they think you may have broken down when you parked up at the side of the road, but they are in the minority. It's not unusual for a car to do a sudden U-turn and come and park up near to you, or just pull over as close to you as he can, so they can just ask questions about your bike and admire it. I even remember one guy coming to look for me because although he couldn't see the bike, he'd heard the engine and thought it sounded interesting. The Bullet may be a humble bike, not big on CCs, certainly not big on performance, but it still has a huge presence. A presence that people seem to find irresistible. Reason number 4. The appeal and sales success of modern classic motorcycles is that they look like a classic, but they're actually a modern bike with modern reliability and none of the hassles and inconveniences of a genuine 50, 60 or 70-year-old classic. They come with a warranty and you don't have to be an accomplished mechanic to own one. They're a sort of a halfway house that's designed to deceive in a nice way. The Bullet, however, is not a modern classic. It's a true original classic that just happens to still be in production. In fact, as I've said before, it's the longest running production motorcycle in the world. Granted, it has had to evolve slightly in order to meet regulations and laws, but of all the pseudo-classic bikes on the road, the Royal Enfield Classic 500, or Humble Bullet as we like to call it, is the only one of the bunch that can genuinely be described as the real McCoy. It's not just a styling exercise, it's the genuine article. Number 3. Customizability. Because of the length of time the Bullet has been on the road, it has what must be described as the largest choice of parts, accessories and custom options on the market. And for the most part, they're not expensive. Generally speaking, we as motorcyclists like to personalise our machines, and the bigger the choice of options we have, the more pleasure we derive from our motorcycling passion. And as far as the Bullet is concerned, the sky is pretty much the limit. The options are literally never ending. Scotsmen, Yorkshiremen and motorcyclists are notoriously tight with their cash. And the proliferation of high quality parts, specially made for the Bullet, available at very reasonable prices, means that you can tinker away to your heart's content on your pride and joy without upsetting the missus too much. Reason number 2. Convenience and rideability. A lot of motorcyclists will tell you that for a bike to be worthy, it must be at least 1000 cc's. It must be capable of over 120 miles an hour. The bigger and faster it is, the better. And that's not true. The truth is, those sorts of motorcycles are capable of performing far beyond the average rider's capabilities. One false move and riding pleasure is turned to intimidation. As a rider, you find you can't express yourself properly on these bikes. They become a tedious exercise in restraint. And these sort of bikes seem to provoke nothing but complaints about the harsh suspension and the uncomfortable seats and the limited fuel range. The Bullet is the exact opposite of that. I can safely say the Bullet is the most comfortable bike I've ever ridden. It's also the most satisfying. There's far more satisfaction to be had from a motorcycle whose performance is commensurate with the average rider's skills. I think for me, the refreshing thing about the Bullet is that it makes you leave your ego at home. There's no room for ego with a Bullet. And believe it or not, that gives you an enormous sense of freedom when you're riding. You can just enjoy the ride. The Bullet has just enough power to be fun without being intimidating. And with fuel consumption figures approaching 100 miles to the gallon, fuel stops are few and far between that don't dominate your mind all the time that you're riding. It's not cluttered and hampered by the latest electricery, no riding modes, no traction control. It's just, well, a bike. What more could you possibly ask for? Reason number 1. The price. Some people might argue that the Bullet is an expensive bike, and I suppose it sort of seems it when you compare it to something like the Interceptor or the Continental GT, but at well under £5,000, I think it's actually a bit of a bargain. Now, this is a difficult comparison, but humour me and listen. Compare the Classic 500 with something like a Triumph T120. The T120, taking into account the quality and performance of the machine, is about £9,000 worth of bike, but here in the UK you will pay close to £11,000. Now, the extra money that you pay on that bike is the fee for the heritage that you're buying into. In essence, you're paying a big chunk of cash for the name, but that price tag is slapped onto a heritage which, to be honest, is about 40% spin. It's imaginary, it's manufactured, it's not real, but people pay that for the sake of having the name Triumph on the tank. Now, when you compare that to the Royal Enfield, Royal Enfield's heritage is 100% true. They've been making motorcycles constantly for 118 years without a gap anywhere. Royal Enfield's heritage, if you like, has true provenance. There's no spin, it's genuine. And if they are charging you a premium for that heritage, it's a small premium. You're getting a basic bike for what is really a basic price. Not a modern day interpretation of a 1950s machine, but a subtle evolution of a genuine 1950s machine for what is pretty much a bargain basement price. And second-hand residual value tends to remain quite high. Because these bikes are inexpensive, owners tend to hang on to them even if they're not riding them anymore. There should be a glut of second-hand machines on the UK market, but there isn't. And that helps to keep residual values high. Now, worldwide there are still some new models left. I think it depends which country you live in, but if you shop around you may be able to find what you're looking for. For the most part it's the Tribute Black model, the last iteration special edition that is at the moment still plentiful, but when they've gone, they've gone. That will be the end of the Bullet. For 80 something years the Royal Enfield Bullet 500 has been in continuous production, but if you think of the lifetime of this bike as being a day, a 24-hour period, we're now at about a minute to midnight, and when the clock strikes 12, the chance of owning a new example of this historical icon of a motorcycle will be gone. Once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I am of course going to be back on Friday, so until then, please, if you're riding, ride safely, and I'll see you soon.